We heard yesterday that Devon is home to one of the 7 natural wonders of the UK. The Royal Geographical Society has identified the Jurassic Coast, this is between Exmouth and Swanage, as an area of beauty and geological significance. Well, we always knew it, didn't we? What does it mean, though, to us if we take a walk along an East Devon beach? How much Jurassic history are we likely to spot? Kieran Satchell is a man who knows an awful lot about fossils and dinosaurs, who loves bringing history alive to youngsters by giving talks to local scouting groups. And he's hopefully going to make sense of it all for me today as well and for us. Hi, Kieran, how are you?
Yeah, I'm doing all right, thank you. Thank you so much for having me today.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's really good to have you here. I know that you have done an awful lot of work alongside the Jurassic Coast there. How do you feel about it being recognised by the Royal Geographical Society?
It's absolutely wonderful. As you said so yourself, I mean, it's no wonder that it's been recognised by the Geographical Society because we are one of the world's only natural World Heritage Sites.
It's closest to us if we want to go and hunt for decent fossils, isn't it? And I should imagine you found quite a few things along that coast before.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it takes me back to what first really inspired me when I was 6 years old. I went on a school trip with my local primary school. And I found, as kids do, you pick up whatever looks interesting. I picked this thing up and I went to the fossil guy and I said, what's this? Is this anything? And she pops it in a little zip seal bag and she hands it to me and she said, that is an ichthyosaurus rib fragment. And just ever since then, I've just been captivated.
Ichthyosaurus. I'm just trying to imagine what.
Ichthyosaurus, yeah. It's a prehistoric marine reptile that looks very much like modern-day dolphins.
Oh, right. Oh, how wonderful. Yeah, I can see how at a young age you were hooked into instantly. You always wanted to be a reptile keeper, didn't you?
Yeah, so I mean, I still actually am, funnily enough. I do still love my reptiles and I keep reptiles, but, when you're a kid, you love dinosaurs. As you grow up, you start to think, oh, it's not very cool, is it, like in Dinosaurs? So I moved to something that was a little bit similar, but felt to me a bit more professional, so to speak. And then during my years at university, I got acquainted with an old school friend who happened to be studying paleontology, and I just instantly became very jealous and decided, you know what, I want to go back to dinosaurs.
So didn't you change course in order to be able to do that?
So, funnily enough, I didn't actually change course. I stayed on the course, which was animal behaviour and welfare.
Right.
And I went to my course superiors and I said, look, this isn't working out for me. Is there any way, with this being a biology course, that I can integrate paleontology somehow? And with paleobiology being a subject of recreating these animals as if they were still alive, what would they be like? What would their organs be like? I managed to integrate a topic called pneumaticity. And what that basically refers to is the avian respiratory system that birds have, which is very complex. In short, it basically allows them to breathe in and out at the same time. And there is evidence to believe that dinosaurs also have that respiratory system. So I was able to integrate that into my course and write that up for my thesis.
Your thesis was the pneumaticity of an unidentified sauropod from the Morrison Formation of northern Montana. Have I got that right?
That is correct, yes.
Wow. Saying it is hard enough, actually studying it. You have been to some amazing places, haven't you, around the world to study this?
Yeah, I mean, I've been very fortunate. I've kind of sought all these opportunities out myself. For my internship, I went out to Montana and I did a 5-week internship, which is where I gathered data for my final year thesis. And then the following year, I got a week out in Portugal in a small little town called Lourinhã. And I did some work there, voluntary work in the labs and helping excavate on the cliffs near the beach.
Kieran, I've heard that your house is like a dinosaur graveyard.
Yeah, that's one way to call it. I always like when I have guests to have conversation points, things that really capture people's interest, because I'm not going to lie, I got the gift of the gab. I like talking about things. I like talking about what I'm interested in. I like seeing people interested in our own history. And so I've got, fossils in cabinets. And recently my partner helped me 3D print a life-size skull of an asaurus, which is currently sitting in the corner.
How did your partner feel about all of this?
She was very supportive, I will say. I commend her for supporting me in my crazy endeavours.
Wonderful. What's your best find then? I've heard that you got an amazing jawbone once. Yeah.
Oh, yes, absolutely. So I'll try and make the story as short as possible. I contacted another local fossil hunting expert called Mike Harrison, who's quite renowned along the Jurassic Coast, and he took me out for a day, and he was going to kind of show me how he finds fossils. And we're all walking along the beach at Lyme Regis. And just on the shingles, the pebbles, not exactly digging into rocks or anything, there's this, you could just look at it and you knew what it was. It was a jaw with teeth, and I picked it up and I turned around. I couldn't believe it. I said, You've put this in, haven't you? You put this in knowing I'd find it. And he said, if I put that there, or if I'd seen it, I would have been having it. You wouldn't have got it.
What was it though?
So it was about a couple of inches long, a piece of jaw, the top and the bottom of the mouth, with some teeth still intact in that jaw. So that is on the centre of my cabinet.
And again, it was the dinosaur that you mentioned,
Yeah.
the one I can't pronounce.
Ichthyosaurus, yeah. And the funny thing about that is the Ichthyosaurus is iconic because that was what famous paleontologist Mary Anning, who kind of put this area on the map for paleontology, and she found she found the first Ichthyosaurs to be formally described and named, and these were not actually dinosaurs, though. They were very close relatives. They diverged from the same common ancestor, but they aren't strictly speaking dinosaurs. Best rule of thumb to know what wasn't a dinosaur was if it spent its entire life in the ocean, or if it spent most of its life in the sky, it was probably closer related to reptiles than dinosaurs.
Ah, right, I'm with you. So the kind of things that we would be finding along the Jurassic Coast then are sea, sort of marine animals from that time.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Jurassic Coast is a snapshot of what the oceans were like during these prehistoric times. So nearly all of the animals that you will find along the Jurassic Coast are animals that lived in the ocean. However, there are some really interesting exceptions to that. At Charmouth Beach, there was a dinosaur discovered, which is a personal favourite of mine, called the Skydosaurus. And it baffled scientists because we're thinking, well, what was this dinosaur doing in the ocean? Dinosaurs don't appear here. They're not meant to be here. And it's proposed that particular area, 145 million years ago in the Jurassic, would have been little kind of archipelagos, so to speak, and these dinosaurs would commute from trying to swim between these little land islands, and perhaps maybe got into rough times and unfortunately drowned out at sea, maybe.
Goodness me. It's trying to piece together, isn't it? You're a detective, really.
Yeah, it is a lot of detective work, yeah.
Now, we've had a question in. This comes from Mike in Chudley, who says, rather rudely here, he says, I've had two old fossils for 30 years. One's called a shepherd's crown. The other is the wife. Mike, what are you like? I wanted to know about the shepherd's crown. Is it a common fossil? Is it something that people often find?
The shepherd's crown. I will be completely honest, and this is a rather disappointing answer, but I will never pretend to know something I don't. Shepherd's crown is something that a name I haven't come across. So I've heard of I've heard of things like devil's toenails, which are like mollusk shells, which are called that way obviously because they look like a rather gnarly curled claw. But unfortunately, I'm very sorry, Mike, I haven't heard of a shepherd's crown.
I'm just looking at, I just looked it up online now, and it's sort of like a circular thing. It looks a bit like, it is a lump of rock, and it looks a bit like, I don't know, like a starfish or something that's within that.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, my answer to Mike would be he has given me something that I need to learn and need to know. So I'm incredibly sorry to disappoint on that one, Mike.
Oh, it's also called a fairy loaf. And it's, I'm just looking now, a fossil sea urchin. There are lots of different names for it, but sea urchin is what we're looking at.
Yeah, so sea urchins tend to pop up quite commonly along the Jurassic Coast. I mean, things like belemnites, which are the structure inside prehistoric squid shells, and ammonites are obviously the most common ones we associate with the Jurassic Coast. But from time to time, I have come across fossilized sea urchins as well, and if that's what these shepherd's crowns are,
Yeah.
then yeah, I would say that they are quite a common fossil, yeah.
And that's the kind of thing that you would be finding along the Jurassic Coast then, if you're hunting along the beach.
Yeah, so basically the best places to be fossil hunting are Charmouth Beach, Lyme Regis, because they've just been yielding fantastic fossils for many, many years, all the way back to the 18th century. And, you know, the most common ones you probably find are what we call belemnites, which are remains of prehistoric squid. And, you know, they're quite common. Children will pick them up and say, oh, look, Daddy, Mummy, I found a dinosaur teeth. But 9 times out of 10, it tends to be these bullet-shaped structures, which are from prehistoric squid. They tend to be the ones you go home with pockets full at the end of the day.
If there are things like cliff falls, which unfortunately along the Jurassic Coast we do see quite a lot of, is it more likely then to if you go afterwards to see something?
So the best places, yes. But on one hand, the best times to find fossils are when there have been, you know, new land masses that have come down. But at the same time, as tempting as it can be, it is imperative that you don't go rummaging through that material because, you know, it's come from an unstable part of the cliff. The best way to get the best of the finds that come down with that is to allow the natural tide to wash in, wash out, and bring that material to you from the safety of the beach rather than rummaging through the newly fallen material.
Good idea. Yes, yeah. Safety first. That's the key thing.
Absolutely.
How do you boil all of this knowledge that you have? Because I mean, you've studied for many years. You know much more than I'll ever know, and make it accessible to youngsters as young as beavers because they love your talks, don't they?
yeah. Where do I start, really? Well, I always found that after doing my academic years at university, I enjoyed it. It was a time of my life, but I just found that academia was very difficult. And I know, and as someone with ADHD, a learning difficulty myself, I know that it can be incredibly difficult for people to understand this sort of stuff. And I thought, you know what, why don't I try making that more accessible and bringing it to the people, so to speak, and bring it to the people that are most passionate about it, because I realised that my passion lied in teaching people about this sort of stuff.
So, and you were a scout yourself, weren't you?
I was a scout for a long time, and I thought it was a good opportunity for me to give back to my local community who had basically brought me up in scouts, you know. And with me at my university, I actually did a small module on science communication, how to make that accessible to different age groups and audiences. And that greatly aided me in being able to break this down and digest it into a suitable activity session for younger groups.
Because it's quite a complex subject, isn't it? And we know that youngsters absolutely love the whole subject of dinosaurs. But to make it educational, you know, it can't be too easy.
It is difficult, but what I've learned through the sessions I've given for children is to never underestimate them. They blew my mind with the sort of stuff that they actually knew, and it was kind of like looking at my younger self. And I found that the best thing to do is to actually give them the scientific words, give them the challenge, because they love it and they sap it up so quickly. So what I like to do is, rather than kind of band-aid some of the more technical stuff, actually feed it in there in a slightly different way so they're learning it without actually realising it.
Yeah. And you've got all the models and everything to show them, haven't you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I love bringing my collections along.
At university, we know, Kieran, you studied animal behaviour in dinosaurs. Now, I can see how that is a really interesting subject, but how useful is it to us living now without any dinosaurs anymore?
So the study of our dinosaur behaviour, so to speak, would be more to do with the subject called iconology, which is about the impressions that dinosaurs have left behind. So, for example, things like coprolites, which are dinosaur poop, and footprints, and studying these footprints in the trackways, how they move, everything like that is to do with iconology. And that can tell us an awful lot about dinosaurs. For example, if you've got the footprints but you've got no bones, there is actually a technical mathematical equation which you can use to actually determine not only the size of the height of the dinosaur that left them, but also how fast that dinosaur was moving.
Mm-hmm. I'm just trying to get my head around the fact that dinosaur droppings are still in existence, are they?
Yeah. So There is, I can't remember it, but there is a world record awarded to the biggest dinosaur poop that has been discovered. And they can actually, most like modern biologists would use to get an idea of that animal's diet. Coprolites can also be segmented and cut in half, and you can sometimes find fossilized bones within these masses, which tell us about the sort of things these animals were eating.
Yes, yeah. Fascinating subject. I just get the sense, Kieran, that it's tip of the iceberg. There's so much more that we can talk about and explore, and I'm hoping that in weeks to come you'll come back and share a few more finds with us, will you?
I would absolutely love to. Yeah.
Fantastic. Kieran, it's lovely to speak today. Thank you for joining us. And,
thank you so much for having me.
We can celebrate this week, can't we, the fact that Jurassic Coast is now an area of beauty and geological significance. We'll get out there and start enjoying it a little more. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. Cheers.
Okay, Kieran Satchell there. How fascinating. If you'd like to know more about dinosaurs or fossils that you've found, then Kieran will be back with us in times to come. Right, it's